Do opposites actually attract when it comes to mate selection? Let's talk about that today. So, today in Random in Psychology, we are going to talk about mate selection. Keep in mind, mate selection is when we're looking for a long term partner, whether for marriage or for just not marriage, but just a long term partner. So keep in mind, we're not really focusing here today on what we call short term mating strategies, which because some people call, hooking up or whatever. So couple things that we want to know about who we look for in a long-term mate. First, we look for someone who is available to us. And what that means is that we are looking for someone that we can actually spend time with, interact with, get to know. One of the things that we know is that it takes us a while typically to develop an emotional attachment to a person. And usually that comes from interacting with them often. And so if we have the opportunity to interact with them maybe on the phone or via FaceTime or via chat or messages, the attraction may be less than if we're interacting with them in a face-to-face manner, regularly. So we do find that long-term relationships that are distance relationships are more likely to end than are long-term relationships that are not distance relationships. So we want to be able to, sit down on the couch and hang out and hold hands and watch Criminal Minds together while eating popcorn, as opposed to having to do that via video chat. And that is going to, sitting with the person and interacting with them is going to release oxytocin and other neurotransmitters and chemicals that will make brain happy, that will then be associated with this person, and that will make our brain think that we are attracted to this person. So another thing we want to think about is whether or not the person is eligible, and not just, eligible in terms of they married, not married, already in a relationship, but do they fit our criteria in terms of what we perceive to be attractive? So do they have personality traits that we're looking for? Do they have morals and values that fit with our own personal morals and values? The research does show that long-term relationships work out best if we have the same values and the same morals. So it might be of interest to you to do a values assessment. You can find them online, and kind of figure out your own values hierarchy, which is most important. Do keep in mind that our values over time might change. So for example, as a younger person, having a family may not be a high level value for us, whereas as we get older, it might become more of a higher level value for us. We also want to think about this person's attractiveness, not just physical attractiveness, which does play into it, but also attractiveness in terms of their personality. How do they interact with others? Again, values, morals. And then we also want to think about um, emotional supportiveness, whether or not they are in a similar political vein as we are. There is some research that shows that people prefer people who are of the same political affiliation to us. Um, Another thing we can think about is uh, the variables that help us to maintain a long-term relationship. So David Buss, who is at UT, has done some research in terms of whether or not opposites attract, which is that question we started off with at the beginning. The answer for long-term mating relationships is no. So the more similar people are, the more likely they are to stay together for a longer period of time. But we also talk about similarity in terms of specific variables. You don't have to like the same exact thing or be the same exact way in terms of personalities for us to be attracted to each other, but we do have to have some specific things that would make us stay attracted. So those variables that Buss talked about included things like age, level of education, race, religion, ethnic background, attitudes and opinions, mental abilities, socioeconomic status, height, weight, and even eye color. So it's almost as if we have a preference for, we're running around looking for someone who's similar to us in many different ways in order to find our long term mate. We also know that men and women are generally similar in terms of what they're looking for, aside from two particular variables. Men are looking for or rating physical attractiveness higher on the important scale, and women are rating good earning potential higher on the attractiveness scale. And according to Buss, this is an evolutionarily important reasoning concept. So the reason why women are looking for men who they believe to be high earners or partners who they believe to be high earners is because if they do become pregnant, that takes a lot of resources. They may not be able to work themselves. They're looking for somebody who is financially capable of taking care of them and of a baby. Whereas men are looking for physical attractiveness, and one of those things that they're looking for physical attractiveness is health. So indicators of health and indicators of fertility are things that men look for in a long-term mate. Now, here's the thing. Do we consciously go, oh, will he be able to, or will she be able to do XYZ? Will they be able to provide for me financially if I become pregnant? Will they be able to have children? No, this is not something that we're doing consciously. These are things that are kind of going on in the background of our minds that we are finding attractive. Okay, so this has been your random in psychology for today. We were talking about attractiveness and long-term mating strategies. Come back tomorrow and we'll talk more.